You thought you had the contract. You committed. You provided stability, consistency, and an open ear. You built the perfect life raft. And yet, she jumped ship. You've been told she cheated because she was missing an emotional connection or felt neglected. That's the lie. That's the comfortable narrative that keeps you confused. Today, we tear that lie down. We're going to expose the brutal, psychological truth about what truly drives a woman, even a loyal one, to seek validation and intimacy outside of a long-term relationship. It's not about what you did wrong. It's about the primal psychological contract that you unknowingly allowed to expire. We are talking about the death of challenge, the betrayal of frame, and the psychological pressure cooker of hypergamy when security becomes suffocation. This is the conversation no one wants you to hear, but it's the only one that will save you. It's the question that haunts every man who has ever been blindsided. Why? Why did she risk everything? Why did the woman you built a life with, the one who swore she loved you, seek a connection elsewhere? You look back and you see consistency, effort, and commitment. You see security. And you were told, well, she must have been unhappy. That's the partial, comfortable truth. But the full, devastating truth is that her unhappiness was merely the symptom of a profound psychological shift you failed to recognize. The reality is that cheating is rarely about what she found, and almost always about what she lost in the relationship. And what she lost was the challenge, the upward reach, and the unshakable frame of the man she committed to. We need to stop dealing in surface emotions and start dealing in primal psychology. For years, you were the goal. You were the unshakable mountain she wanted to climb. But somewhere along the line, you became the valley, comfortable, predictable, and fully explored. And when the psychological contract of challenge expires, the evolutionary drives kick back in. If you are a man who is ready to understand the dark mechanics behind why committed relationships fall apart, and if you are willing to look at the psychological drivers that transcend love and security, then you need to commit to this channel. We don't offer feel-good advice. We offer uncomfortable truths that empower. Hit that subscribe button right now. Don't let the next devastating lesson be learned through your own pain. Learn it here. The first driver of infidelity, the one no marriage counselor will tell you about, is the death of the upward reach. When a woman commits to a man, she is, in a hypergamous sense, locking in the highest value she could attain at that moment. The psychological contract is predicated on the belief that her man will either maintain that high value or, ideally, continue to grow and increase his value. In long-term relationships, men often make the fatal mistake of achieving what they perceive as stability and then stopping their upward climb. They stop innovating in their career. They stop challenging themselves physically, and most importantly, they stop cultivating a rich inner world independent of her. They become the safe bet, the fixed, completed project. This is what happened to a client, let's call him Michael. Michael and his wife were married for 15 years. Stable jobs, 2 kids, beautiful home. Textbook success. Michael stopped working out, stopped pushing his career, and devoted all his free time to the home. He thought he was being the perfect family man. But his wife started an affair with her running coach. Why? Because the coach represented growth, challenge, and an upward reach that Michael had abandoned. The coach wasn't more successful or necessarily better looking. He was simply in motion. He was a psychological frontier. Michael had become a comfortable piece of furniture, and his wife's primal psychology needed a man who was still striving, still challenging himself, still signaling high, non-static value. The woman who cheats isn't always looking for a new man. She's looking for the old version of her man, the one who is still a challenge, still climbing, still compelling her to reach upward. When she realizes her man has stopped climbing, her hypergamist instincts tell her that her own locked-in value is now depreciating, and that creates the necessary internal justification for seeking a new psychological contract. The second driver, the silent killer of fidelity, is the collapse of the frame and the need for a new test. In a long-term relationship, women unconsciously run continuous tests to gauge the strength of their partner's emotional frame. They need to know that their man is unshakable, that he's a rock whose internal sovereignty is independent of her approval. When a man prioritizes security over his own frame, when he sacrifices his boundaries, compromises his values, and makes her the sole center of his emotional world, he consistently fails these tests. He becomes emotionally dependent, needy, and predictable in his approval seeking. This is the case of David, a man who loved his girlfriend deeply, but became terrified of losing her. When she started demanding more control over his time, he gave up his hobbies. When she criticized his friends, he distanced himself. He became an emotional doormat, thinking his compliance was devotion. The result? She started seeking out conflicts and arguments, just to see if he would finally draw a line, just to see if the strong man was still in there. When he never did, her subconscious concluded he lacked the necessary emotional strength for leadership, and she found a man who would push back, who would enforce his frame, and who would pass her tests. She wasn't looking for a man who would treat her better. She was looking for a man who treated himself with more respect. The man she cheats with is often not kinder or more loving. He is simply the one who still possesses the unshakable frame that her primary relationship lost. Cheating in this light is often a subconscious attempt to find a partner whose strength validates her desire, or an attempt to trigger a strong, decisive reaction from her current partner, a final desperate test for a pulse in his masculinity. If the truth about frame and value is making you reevaluate your own relationships, and you're seeing patterns you need to break, you're in the right place. Don't just consume this information, apply it. Subscribe now to join the only community that deals in the reality of attraction and emotional sovereignty. The final devastating driver is the suffocation of predictability and the scarcity of tension. Long-term relationships, by their nature, emphasize comfort and security. That's good for cohabitation, but lethal for desire. The psychological challenge and mystery that defined the beginning of the relationship is slowly replaced by total, suffocating predictability. The man she cheats with often represents a complete break from that predictability. He is a source of novelty, tension, and risk. He activates the dopamine rush of the unknown, the same rush that was present when you first met her. This is a story I hear often, the story of the midlife crisis affair. Consider Susan, a woman in her late 40s who was married to a wonderful, supportive, but entirely predictable accountant. Her affair wasn't with a younger man. It was with a man she met in an online class, someone who was intellectually and emotionally distant, who only replied to her texts intermittently, and whose life seemed mysterious and full of travel. The affair wasn't about sex. It was about mental investment and emotional tension. She had to work to earn his attention. She had to invest mental energy into figuring out his schedule, his feelings, and his next move. The affair became an addictive psychological game fueled by intermittent reinforcement, a game where the reward, his attention, was scarce and unpredictable, making it infinitely more valuable than the abundant
predictable attention she received at home. The man who truly understands this doesn't fear novelty. He embodies it. He maintains a sense of mystery about his inner world, his goals, and his mission. He never allows his life to become so predictable that she feels she has the entire map. He keeps climbing, he keeps growing, and he keeps the psychological contract of challenge alive. The truth about why women cheat is that it is often the ultimate consequence of the man prioritizing comfort over challenge, security over sovereignty, and her approval over his mission. Cheating is the sign that the evolutionary needs for upward reach, unshakable strength, and compelling novelty have been starved to death. The solution is not to monitor her. The solution is to reignite your upward ascent. Become the man who is so compelling, so focused on his mission, and so unshakable in his frame that you are still the most challenging, most interesting person she knows. Reclaim your sovereignty, restore your challenge, and commit to being the man whose growth is perpetually fascinating. If the truth exposed here has given you the clarity you need to move forward and focus on building your own unshakable value, then don't let this wisdom fade. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. The hard, psychological truth is the only thing that will ever set you free. Use this knowledge to become the man whose value is non-negotiable and whose frame can never be broken.